Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. And for once, I want to start the show upbeat with a funny joke. Here's something I hope will tickle your funny bone. You ready? Here we go. What's red on Wednesday, then red on Friday, and then red on Saturday night? John Moxley. Get it? It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. My name is Bob Smith. I used to be with Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines and a host of other wrestling titles on the newsstand. Their magazines were available in candy stores and department stores and supermarkets. Oh, those were the days. Well, anyway, I don't want to show how old I am, but I will say thanks for being here and thanks for coming back. Before we get started, our show is about Portland wrestling this week with the great Mike Leotis of Wrestle Weekly. Really glad to have him back. But I want to talk about the Wrestling Fans International Association, which is back. And there's some great people on the board. There's some great people running it. I'm very excited about the revival of something that was around in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the era when I read a bunch of wrestling magazines. It's the WFIA, also known as the Wrestling Fans International Association. And there's some great people involved with the revival of it. They're just getting started now. And I think it's something you ought to turn your attention to. If you have a spare moment, go to Facebook, go to Twitter or Instagram and read up on the Wrestling Fans International Association. I mean, look who's involved with this revival of a fan association that also used to have a lot of great wrestling talent and promoters in the organization. The executive director is Brad Drake, with his assistant is Brian Ferguson. On the board are people that you know, and Dave Dynasty, and David Harold, and Rick Del Santo, George Shire, and Jason Monday. And the advisors are Tom Burke and Dave Drayson. I mean, how good is this? I mean, how good does this sound? Just from reading the names, I think you'd want to be involved with it. So go to Facebook, go to Twitter and Instagram, and look for WFIA, or the Wrestling Fans International Association, and check out their expansive website, thewfia.org. That's thewfia.org. And guess what? They still have that same cool old school logo. The strongman holding up the oblong globe. Remember that in the circle? It's still the same. And I'm hoping the organization still has that much flavor. I am going to join. I promise you that. I'm already a member of one of their Facebook groups. I think you should be too. So enough of my yakking on that. I think it's well worth looking into. We're going to talk about Portland wrestling, or Pacific Coast wrestling, or for a while, big time wrestling, as it was known in Oregon. And our guest is a good friend of the show. His third appearance here, Mike Leotis. It was always a blast to have on the show. As you know, we had Scotty Richardson on a few weeks ago. So we figured we'd follow it up with Mike, who knows more about wrestling than I've had hot dinners. Does that work? I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, enough of my blabbing. Let's talk about Portland. Everybody misses Portland. I know I do. And here is the one and only Mike Leotis. Well, I know I have the Wrestler Weekly bunch on a lot. You know why? I like what they do. They're great guys. You know, I'm a fan of everything they do. Scotty Richardson in his books. And here's the second component, shall we say, of Wrestle Weekly. It's Mr. Mike Leotis, who's back for his third appearance on the show. How are you?
So happy to be here. They say third time's the charm, but I really enjoyed the first two a whole heck of a lot. So I think three is going to be even better.
Well, they tell me I'm not charming no matter how many times you meet me, but what can I say? It's just the way it goes. But I know I'm a little acerbic these days. Some things in wrestling have been irking me lately,
Oh,
both
same.
personally and the way it's been presented in certain
Yeah.
areas. So I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But
I feel you there.
I started the show with a joke about AEW, so you'll have to wait to hear that.
Who's
I want
Bob
you to hear
there?
that as it comes out. But anyway, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, same thing with me. I've learned watching, modern wrestling recently that just a lot of it's just not for me anymore. I love certain things, but just it's just not the same. I find myself on YouTube quite a bit, or Peacock quite a bit, watching old film. When I should be, maybe watching AEW or Monday Night Raw or something like that.
Yeah, I know how you feel. I watch a lot of Peacock, a lot of Joe McHugh. I watch a lot of the, the old stuff. The Johnny Rod's days and the WWF.
Yeah.
I'm hooked on that stuff because that's what I grew up watching.
Same, and I love getting to watch things that I've read about and haven't seen before or wanted to see. And then thankfully, due to the advent of digital technology, we can see. So I get into a lot of old Southwest wrestling and, right now, which is going to be, I know our current topic, Portland wrestling, and just a lot of things that wasn't as easily accessible, I guess, in my area. Or that I just read about reading the back issues of the magazines and just love that era, 80s, 70s, and just wanted to learn more and more and more,
Well, one of the cool things about working where I worked at Rockville Center, New York for the London Publishing and the Wrestling Magazine Company was that we got tape from all over. Sometimes the promotions would send us tapes. Sometimes we would tape trade with some fans who would get the magazine and stuff like that. Others were just, we got them from wrestlers sometimes who shows, here, look what I did on this Saturday show and what promotion, what have you.
Yeah.
So I got to see everything and I watched everything.
That's awesome.
And luckily, for the first time in my life, when I joined in '88, I got to see Portland wrestling, or what we called Pacific Northwest Wrestling in the magazines. And we had the ratings in there. And but like you, I just knew the names. I just saw the names.
Yeah.
I saw it was a mishmash at that point of established stars that I knew a few of them, and some young stars that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
So I figured I better start watching this. And when I started watching it, I was like, this is different. First of all, it was the dingiest arena I ever saw on a TV show. But you know what? The crowds were hot. The action was even hotter. And it was some serious brawling on that show. What? It was really, really good. I can't say I ever went to Portland, but I know some guys that worked there. And I have yet to meet the person who worked in Portland to say I had a great time there in terms of the wrestlers.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because a few years ago, I got to work on a wrestling show. I used to work with a local promotion here in New Jersey, and they had Tom Pritchard in. And as a coach that weekend, and he was going to appear on the shows and different things. And so we were eating lunch one day, and I got to ask him, hey, what was your experience working with Portland? He, again, just said it was great. He goes, Don Owen was a fantastic promoter. He goes, I really loved being there. He said, but he goes, it was the weather. It was just so much rain. He goes, I just felt myself depressed. And he goes, the weather was the only reason why I left.
Well, I'll tell you, when I watched those shows, I think at that point, Don Koss was the announcer.
Don Koss was doing it.
And him in his ill-fitting tuxedo. I mean, I love that old school way that they presented it. It's like, if you ask anybody who ever goes back in Portland, they didn't really change the presentation a whole lot from the 60s through when they went off the air in 1991.
No, outside of maybe updating the ring ropes, it was really the same. And, they call it the House of Action, so when I started watching the clips, Frank Bonema was still the announcer. Unfortunately, Frank Bonema passed in 1982, very young, but he was there for years and years. And they just had such a unique setup because of it being the bowling alley. The ceilings were low. But then they had that crow's nest that they would go up and do the interviews, and they did a lot of 2 out of 3 falls matches, and in between they would go back to the locker room. So Buddy Rose could be wrestling, Roddy Piper in a 2 out of 3 falls, and then, Rose could win the first fall. Then he's up in the crow's nest talking to Frank Bonema, or they're doing, Lord Jonathan Boyd, comes out and he's challenging this one. So it was just a very unique presentation. But even like, as I found, so I don't know if you've seen, Bob, so where I watch Portland wrestling is a YouTube channel called Testosterone Overload. And these are actually tapes that Buddy Rose taped of Portland wrestling. They've been digitized. I don't know the name of the owner of the channel. But a lot of times too, they leave like the old Tom Peterson's furniture
right.
there,
Yeah.
Marv Tonkin Ford or whatever, and you just
Right.
the whole, like what it was like to be there. And so, for me, I was like, I'd read the same thing, read about it. So I just turned 39 a month ago, and people are like, how do you watch this stuff that you weren't even born for? That, how do you know this stuff? And I just always loved it. As a kid, I started tape trading. I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. That was just the era that always stuck out to me, that 70s, 80s. When you give me everything like past 89, I'm like, all right, like I can take or leave any of that stuff, but you hit me, and even too, I loved learning stuff about, me and Scotty were just talking about Don Eagle last night, you talk about just all these things from the past, but for me, like I said, Portland was one of those territories that's like, man, I read about it. I saw the names. I had heard Jimmy Snuka had been there, and I had heard Roddy Piper had been there. And then, as we had mentioned before we came on, always heard about Buddy Rose. When my first memories of Buddy Rose was as the AWA tag champion, against the Midnight Rockers. And then, we went to the WWF, and it was like, I worked hard for this body and he put on all this weight and, and the blowaway diet and all that. But he was an excellent promo, as I discovered watching Portland, an excellent promo. And he really, it was a territory that was revolving around a top heel, not a top babyface. And I just loved it. He just phenomenal in the ring, phenomenal character work. He was kind of like E.F. Hutton. If he was talking, I was listening,
Yeah.
He just is this magnetic, like, man, I want to see him get his tail kicked so bad.
Well, Buddy Rose is an odd case in that, he was always soft-ish looking, even when he was in better shape. Like he was in the WWF back around 81, 82, and was a championship contender for Bob Backlund back then.
Yeah.
But he could do anything athletically in the ring. He was fast on his feet. He was great bumps he took.
Incredible.
And great facials and really good on the stick. He made you hate him. 217 pounds,
Yeah. And he just ran with it. And then, learning about Buddy Rose's army, like the stables that he kept around him, which led to, me seeing Ed Wiskowski. And when I had seen, obviously a lot of people know Colonel De Beers and, that gimmick. And I had seen like an Ed Wiskowski match here or there, like on Mid-South Wrestling, and I didn't think much of it. And then you see him in Portland, and him and Rose were dominant, just incredible talkers. Wiskowski, really, really good. I wish Colonel De Beers wasn't the lasting memory, but Ed Wiskowski was incredible. Just tall, big guy. You don't realize how big he was. He was a huge man.
Yes, he was.
And just excellent in the ring. Just again, on the promos, I just wanted to kill them, but they talked me into, and I just had to keep watching. I had to keep watching to see these guys get their comeuppance. And it's just incredible to watch.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Wiskowski had a short run in the WWF as the Polish Prince.
The Polish Prince.
That did not last very long. I don't even remember the year. I think it was in the 70s, I think. It came and went real quick.
Yeah, which I'm surprised. I think he was such a good talker. I would have thought he would have done really well there. And folks really liked the ethnic gimmicks, back then.
Oh, yeah. I think he was brought in to fight Putski, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. All
You
right.
know, they needed a foil for Putski, and
Yeah.
it didn't work.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe because
But
he was like a foot and a half taller than Ivan.
yeah, but you know, we're talking about Buddy Rose. What I like to look at in Portland is the stars who were really superstars there that really didn't travel elsewhere or became super. Like we were talking about Dutch Savage before
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
logged in here. Also, I mean, Len Denton
Len
later
Denton.
on, who was
Yeah.
also a major. You know something? He like guys like Eric Embry and Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. did amazing work behind the scenes in smaller organizations
Absolutely.
that people don't know about.
Yeah. I mean,
And
he was.
Len Denton was pretty much a wrestling genius, from what I understand. He could book, he could work,
Yeah.
he could keep the backstage, you know, under control. He was one of those guys who was a born leader in that regard, and
Yeah.
that's why I think he was so successful in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, Portland, he was a stalwart there for so many years. And yeah, I think he's a guy who added a lot. And again, when you could have somebody who could add a lot behind the scenes there, it's gonna work and it's gonna be successful. But yeah, I mean, even you take a look at guys like he just recently passed away, Hacksaw Brett Wayne Sawyer,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
he was over like Rover in Portland. Like nowhere else. He does this promo where he's just covered in blood. He's got a bandage around his head, and he's up in the crow's nest. Just I forget who he was shooting with at the time, but just incredible. But Portland heavyweight champion, PNW heavyweight champion, Hacksaw Sawyer. So just he was another one. I was just watching a film last night from 1985 with part of the Don Owen family 60th anniversary, and Ricky Vaughn, who later became Lance Von Erich, was the Portland heavyweight champion. I know that's Fritz Von Erich had sent him there for seasoning. I needed a little more than seasoning, but he again over like Rover in Portland. Huge.
Sure. Well, I'm going to read off a list here. And this is not a comprehensive list because it would take too long. You get bored. But I want to read this list of some of the famous Pacific Northwest or Portland champions. These are the heavyweight champions. I'll bet a lot of people didn't know a lot of these people were champions of Portland, like Mad Dog Vachon,
Yeah.
Ed Francis.
Wow.
Here's one that's not a surprise. Tough Tony Bourne.
Yeah,
right?
Tough Tony Bourne, his son Matt Bourne up there as well.
And you followed up with Iron Mike DiBiase, the father of Ted DiBiase. Billy White Wolf.
Just again, now they're just recently passed Adnan Al-Kaisi.
Mm-hmm. King Curtis. And I bet people didn't know that Nick Bockwinkel was a Portland champion.
That's awesome. I mean, I love anything Bockwinkel did. And you mentioned, Curtis Iakea, King Curtis. To me, the greatest voice when he used to do those Kamala promos in the WWF, and he'd be just screaming. And I just love that.
Hogan, the great white Bengal tiger, right? Right.
Incredidible.
Although he was also around 72, a tremendous drooling maniac too.
He was.
He was equally as good as an animal.
Yep. Yeah.
And he was half insane in the WWF in the early 70s. You have to see those tapes to believe it. He was crazy, man.
A lot of slots in the forehead for
right.
Iakea.
All right, here's some more people who were champions in the Pacific Northwest. The Destroyer.
Oh wow, yeah.
Pampero Firpo, which knocks me out. I didn't even know he worked there.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Pat Patterson.
Yeah, I was aware of Patterson.
Pepper Martin.
Okay.
Paul Jones.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Right. Now, here's one that's obvious. And by the way, probably worldwide, out of Portland and out of Oregon, one of the biggest stars, Stan the Man Stasiak.
Stan the Man Stasiak, or Crusher Stasiak.
Right.
As they would call him at times. I was watching a tape with him, again, wrestling Buddy Rose, and it was just so funny seeing, I had always programmed Stan Stasiak in my head as the heel champion who knocked off Pedro and wrestled Bruno. And here he is, in his home state. He's a face, and he's got this mustache.
Yeah.
Just this out of control mustache. And I'm going, gosh. And he's wearing like short tights. And It was just completely wild to see that. And I love seeing that stuff because I don't want to just do like the surface level stuff in wrestling, right? I want to see, you know.
And you know what bothers me? Stan Stasiak was a legitimate tough human being.
Yeah.
Tough as leather, tough
Yeah.
as shoe leather. But a man with his physique would never even be considered to be signed by a major wrestling organization. Because he was just big.
Yeah, he was just a big man. He's built like my grandpa.
Yeah, but big and tough. Like, you know, you wouldn't, the type of guy you wouldn't want to mess with.
Yeah, and just
scarred looking, grim face. You know, he just had it all going on.
Yeah.
All right, here's some more champions. Ripper Collins, who was probably biggest in Hawaii when you think about it in his career.
I would say so. Yeah, right.
And we talked about Dutch Savage, Apache Bull Ramos.
Bull Ramos was huge in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Bull Ramos is somebody who I've gotten into more recently as I've learned more about him. Teamed with the great Hussein, who obviously we came to know better as the Iron Sheik down the road, but teamed with him in Portland. There's some cool photos online of those two teaming together, which is really cool. But Bull Ramos, what a career he had. You know, he was a big time stalwart in Portland.
Mm-hmm. Ron Bass was a champion there.
Ron Bass. And so if you watch Ron Bass's time in Portland, you notice he goes by the name Sam Oliver Bass, which is so that they could call him SOB.
I did not know that.
Sam Oliver Bass. Because I at first I'm like, who the hell is Sam Oliver Bass? And then it's Ron Bass. And so I looked it up. Yeah, that's why they called him that in the Pacific Northwest, so that the initials would spell SOB.
That's amazing. All right, here's an obvious one from years gone by. Jesse the Body Ventura was a champion there.
Yeah.
Roddy Piper, of course, won the belt there. Buddy Rose, who we talked about. Here's one that some people would not realize, Rick Martel.
Rick Martel. So Martel and Piper were tag team champions in the Northwest. And this is just what I was watching recently. This is from 1980. And Martel, first of all, they call him the French Rocket, Rick Martel. And you can see the fieriness in Martel even then. Don Owen announcing him is from Paris, France. Ricky Martel. And so I guess the same way that they would do Piper from Scotland, right? You know, that sounds Scottish, but you know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so Piper and Martel super over as baby faces. And they are working against Rose's army, which at this time is Rose and the two sheep herders, who were incredible in their Portland run. Longer hair at that time, the long tights.
They almost looked hip.
They did.
You know, you go back that far when they were that young. They almost looked like hip guys, right? Yeah. They entirely different countenance than they were later on.
Oh, and at that point, they had been wrestling 15 years. You know, which is crazy, you know, but they were fantastic. I tell people all the time, and it was nice to see people bring this up when Butch Miller passed, because there's some great guys out there like Matt Farmer and Jim Valley and Kirby Strom that really keep Portland wrestling, Mike Rogers, who keep Portland wrestling alive. And it was nice to see those clips, but Piper and they start doing all these hair matches. And the sheep herders both lose hair matches to Piper. They get their head shaved. Then Rose loses a hair match and then wears a mask. Similar to how Buddy Roberts did the headgear with the wig. Buddy Roberts did a wrestling mask with a wig sewn on it. And so they go on that forever. And then they start doing all these loser leaves town matches. Well, Wiskowski had been gone since 79, and about a year. And the sheep herders and Rose end up having a falling out. And so Rose starts to wrestle them again, more hair matches. He beats them. And it was like, if we win, you know, if I win, I'll shave your head. But if I lose, I'll leave the territory kind of deal. So Rose not only goes on a run, he eliminates the sheep herders from the territory, beats both of them in loser leaves town, beats Martel in a loser leave town. But before this, Wiskowski comes back. The sheep herders finally get Rose cornered in a battle royal. All of a sudden, this guy comes out of the crowd And Bonham is talking about, oh, look, it's a fan. And he just, with this giant club, just starts nailing the sheep herders. He's got a COVID mask on in 1980. And he takes off the mask, and it's Wiskowski. Wiskowski's back. So they end up doing more of these. So Piper ends up beating Wiskowski, and a loser leaves town. So it comes down to the ultimate Piper and Rose. Loser leaves Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And going to be on a Tuesday night in the Portland Sports Arena. They have a great match. And Piper has Rose in the sleeper. Now, the story of the sleeper for Piper, which I didn't know, is that Martel taught him the hold. He didn't use the sleeper as a finisher apparently before this. But that Martel teaches him the sleeper. He gets Rose in the sleeper, and Rose takes his feet, kicks back Piper on the turnbuckle. Piper still has the hold. Rose holds him over. Similar to they did the finish, Roddy Piper and Bret Hart at WrestleMania 8. The same finish.
Wow.
And that's where this finish originated, and Piper has to leave Portland. So Rose gets rid of all of them. He gets rid of all of them. So now who comes back in, which is great. It's just a constant revolving door of people trying to get Buddy Rose. Jay Youngblood comes back to the territory. And an old territory favorite who I really like, Lord Jonathan Boyd.
Right.
A great promo. Again, another little guy, but man, tough as nails, but tremendous promo. So now where I'm currently watching, we're getting into 1981. It's those two and Buzz Sawyer trying to get rid of Rose, who now has his army of who's it? Oh, Rip Oliver's come in. The crippler Rip Oliver's come in. Dave Sierra under a mask as the Destroyer. And I forget who the fourth guy is, but yeah, just incredible stuff, and it's just riveting. And again, so you have all these strings with like Rose, this reign of terror for 4+ years so far, from 76 to 80. He's gotten rid of Ventura. He's gotten rid of Snuka. He's gotten rid of Martel. He's gotten rid of all these guys, and they just can't put the Playboy down.
Wow. Let me just run through the rest of these champions. Yeah. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, but some surprising names here. Kurt Hennig was the champ up there.
Kurt Hennig, yep.
Crush from Demolition.
Yeah, Brian Adams.
Who, by the way, I met when he left there in 91. I remember I remember I had to drive him somewhere. I was at a show.
Okay.
He ends up, I had a little Isuzu pup pickup truck, and he could barely fit in the passenger seat, sitting next to me. But we talked for Portland, and he's another guy who said, yeah, I loved it there. It was great.
That's awesome.
I had never heard anybody talk bad about Portland.
No. And
also, Scott Norton.
Yes, got to start up there. Yeah.
And of course, the late Brett Sawyer that we talked about.
Sawyer.
But I mean, that's quite a list. But like I said, the end of Portland was slow and painful. It was like they were getting whittled. Yeah. It was between the State Athletic Commission coming down on them and making things really hard on pro wrestling. People buying up talent left and right. They couldn't get their old stars back. They went off the air despite, at the time, the ratings were still good. That had a really pinch.
Yeah, and it was a shame because people loved that building, and they were still going to try to run wrestling regardless of being on television or not. But it just wasn't going to be sustainable, which was the shame of it, because you had people in that building until the very end. It really was a shame. And again, you talk about, the legacy and, how much people respected it. Ric Flair had an NWA title defense at one point when business was really down in Portland. And I think Don Owen could only pay him I want to say it was like $50. Flair told Don Owen not to pay him to give it to the other wrestlers. And he worked the show for free because of the respect he had for Don Owen as the world champion, which I thought was really, really cool. So, you see things like that and, would just talk about what a fair promoter he was. And, that was really something that stuck out to me, the respect that people had. Even Piper, came back to help produce the shows at the end. And,
that's right.
Piper maintained that relationship with Portland, and it's so cliche now. You hear guys, oh, Piper in Portland. But, to actually watch Roddy Piper, at that point in time, kind of feeling himself out and getting confident in what Roddy Piper was, was really incredible. Really incredible to watch.
You know what bothers me about the legacy of Roddy Piper is people don't realize his incredible stints in both Portland and in California.
Absolutely.
And
Huge.
not enough people have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, California, he had the, and this is some of the earliest memories I have as a kid, are pictures in the magazines of him at the Olympic, losing the hair match to Chavo Guerrero.
Right.
And he's bald and, in that big Olympic auditorium ring, because it was a boxing ring, so it was huge. But, just his work in Portland, the masked Canadian, right, and the feuds that he had there. Yeah, it's cool when you look back, when you see just these legacies that, listen, like the WWF, and I'm glad for the runs those guys had there. Like, it was great, but man, it scratches the surface. And that's why I don't love when WWE does history, because it's very revisionist and, it doesn't always captivate that, wrestling wasn't just in smoke-filled auditoriums before 1984.
Right. That is the big lie.
Yeah.
It's the big lie, man. I'm wrestling drew like gangbusters all over the country.
Yeah.
Every if you can name an organization, they were successful.
Yeah. Buddy Rogers defeated Pat O'Connor for the world title at friggin' Comiskey Park in front of 30,000 people. Don't tell me wrestling wasn't alive before Hulkamania.
Well, here's something here that I'd written down in May 1985 in Portland.
Yeah.
They had a supercard.
Yeah.
A 60th anniversary Portland wrestling show at the Portland Coliseum, a big venue,
a big arena
that sold out.
Yeah.
To watch the blow off to the Roddy Piper Buddy Rose feud.
Yeah.
So successful, they had a second show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so don't tell me it was a podunk little federation, because you know what? If you look at Memphis, they used to do their television show in a little TV studio, and then on Monday nights they'd fill up the Mid-South Coliseum.
Yeah, and you take a look too, and people thought it was dead far before it was. I mean, you look at when Lawler wins the title from Curt Hennig in 1988, that arena sold out. 1988 for an AWA championship match.
Sure.
Incredible, because people believed in Lawler in that city that much. It was part of the lexicon. Jerry just appeared, and by God bless him too. He's been through so much in his physical health, and he's just like a cat. He's got 9 lives. They just had Raw in Memphis, and they brought him out there on one of the commercial breaks. And he waved to he got a little beard now, but it was just, that's how much the fans still care 40 years later, 30 years later. And that is just something that you can't make up. Like, it's incredible. So I hear you there, and another guy too, who we mentioned, right, who maybe wasn't as big a star in other places, but Billy Jack Haynes.
You know what? We didn't mention him, and you're right. He was probably the biggest star in Portland at the time when he left to go to the WWF, I think.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, I know, Billy's gone a little funky in his older age here, but, that's not the Billy Jack Haynes that I remember growing up, and certainly not the Billy Jack Haynes that had an incredible career and did everything he could to care for his ill father. And, one of the first interviews I ever did, I was talking to Jeannie Clark, who was Lady Blossom in WCW. And her and Chris Adams had split after they had come over to America, and she was going to have to go home to England. And Billy Jack Haynes married her so that she wouldn't have to go home. And she said he was just an incredible man, and said it was romantic for a little while, but it wasn't. They were just friends, you know what I mean? And out of the kindness of his heart, made sure she could stay. And so, obviously, the drugs and all that stuff take effect on a person later on. Right. But I mean, Billy Jack Haynes was a stud, Yeah,
he was. I don't think he was ever used right in the WWF. He just they kind of threw him out there. He really didn't give him a lot of room on the stick to develop a personality. He just didn't work well there. But, there's other
personality,
Well, there's other people. Here's another one who was a superstar in Portland, Rip Oliver.
Rip Oliver. Yep. Yep.
Moose Morawski.
Yeah. You know?
It's like people, they may not ring a bell, but they ring a bell to serious fans who read the magazines. I'll tell you that. And of course, Art Barr, Scotty the Body, who later became Raven.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Huge. Rex King and Steve Dahl, right? Or even Scott Peterson before that. They were the Southern Rockers and had a nice run there in the final years of Portland. And they were never as big. And I know they had the Well Done run, and WWF, but they were a great team. They were a great little team.
Also in that time period, Carl Stiles. Vivacious Veronica, who went on to become short-lived valet for Stunning Steve Austin in WCW.
Yes, she did.
Also later worked in ECW.
Yeah.
I always thought she was going to be something big. I really did. I thought she had the makings of a star. I don't know what happened, but you know how these things go.
Yeah.
But as you can see, just off the top of our heads here, how many people passed through Portland?
Yeah, so many.
But we have to bring up the gritty, earthy feel of the television show.
Yeah.
In that converted bowling alley.
Yeah.
The fans were rabid. It reminds me a little bit of Detroit.
Yeah.
In that it was kind of blue collar and, they were just there to see the action and they loved the good guys and despised the bad guys.
Yeah. And it was full of action. I mean, and they call it the House of Action for a reason, I mean, what an atmosphere. And we talked about this a little before we came on. I haven't seen an atmosphere like that. I mean, the only thing that comes close is the Sportatorium in Dallas during the super hot period of 83 to 84. Just the energy in there, or maybe, like I said, like a Jim Crockett Promotions Mid-Atlantic Wrestling in the Carolinas. I mean, the feeling that you got watching it, and I'm watching this spoiler-free, so I don't know who wins. I don't know who loses. I don't know who's coming in. I don't know who's leaving town. And it's really incredible. I mean, it sucks you in. And even too, like just the feel of this gritty little place with these gritty stars like Dutch Savage, like Lonnie Mayne, guys who just made this territory. And then you have, Dutch Savage almost has like this air of like respect, this elder statesman now, a stalwart of Portland, a legend in Portland. And he almost comes out and acts like a de facto matchmaker at time. But just when he would come out with that coal miner's glove and say, all right, Piper, all right, Rose, you two are going to climb the pole for the coal miner's glove, or we're going to throw this thing up in the air, and the fans would just eat it up. And then they would fight in that crow's nest, which is a really cool aesthetic to the building because that's where the announcers sat. It was a little bit raised up behind some of the seating. And that's where they did the interviews. So they'd go up and down the stairs back into the ring, and times where the action just spilled into that crow's nest. And it was incredible.
Now, in terms of wrestling psychology, I know they use that. I use that term a lot, but that's what I get off on. I enjoy how promotions promote. I found Portland to be very, very similar to Stampede in Calgary.
Yeah.
In terms of the way the fans reacted, the angles.
Yeah.
The leaders like the Sings against Owen Hart back in around that same time period. It had a similar flavor, but, a Hart promotion always had its own singular flavor. But what I'm trying to say is the way the fans reacted, it just showed that you could do a pretty good territory even by 92, 93. Add Memphis to that and Continental was still going at that point.
Yeah.
I have to say probably 1994 was a tragedy in the pro wrestling world because that's when they started getting whittled away one by one.
Yeah. And, like I said, you had Smoky Mountain doing some good stuff at that point.
Oh, Smoky Mountain was awesome.
Smoky Mountain was great. Jim Cornette knew how to book a territory.
Oh, and by the way, happy birthday, Jim Cornette. I hope the Nana pudding is good.
Well,
that's all I'm going to say. Yes.
62 for Mr. Jim Cornette.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy, like that Jim Cornette is 62 years old.
Hey, it's crazy that I'm as old as I am too. So we're about. I'll put it this way: Jim and I are about the same age, and he looks way better than I do. So, no, Jim is probably in the best shape I've ever seen him in right now.
Yeah. He
Don't
really,
you think? He looks like he's in excellent shape. He does. He looks great.
Taking care of himself,
Mm-hmm.
But it's incredible, when you look back and, like I said, I miss those things that had that territorial feel. I really feel like the, Billy Corgan bringing back the NWA had a chance to kind of do that. And I had talked to Nick Aldis on an interview for Wrestler Weekly, and he said, I try to imagine it as what would Mid-South look like now?
Right.
South had never closed down. That was kind of his heart behind it. His heart behind wanting the NWA to be something like that. And I think it's a real missed opportunity, unfortunately, that they're not going that route. But to each his own, I guess.
I was so into the revived NWA in 2019 into the pandemic. I was so into it. I never missed a show. I actually took money out of my pocket and bought the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
I don't buy pay-per-views anymore, but I bought those. And then the pandemic hit, and, I understand why people left, more certainty with the guaranteed check somewhere else, la-di-da, you know how it works. But the thing is, the tone and flavor has changed so much in this short amount of time.
Yeah.
I don't want to bash it, but by the same token, I'm greatly disappointed in it.
Yeah, it's not the same. And they have some good talent, you know what I mean? But it's just, it's just not the same kind of energy, that it was. It really had that.
But look who they had in 2019.
Oh,
they
yeah.
Not then, but they had Eli Drake, who was LA Knight.
Yeah.
They had James Storm.
Yeah.
They
Eddie
had,
Kingston.
Yes, Eddie Kingston. Exactly.
Eddie Kingston.
They had Damian Sandow, of course.
Yeah.
Who's still there. He's one of the few from that era that are still there.
They're still there.
But if you go down the list of the talent they had at that point, still working Rock and Roll Express for a few minutes. They had Jim Cornette in color.
Yeah.
But one by one, the glue, the veterans, started to flake away.
Yeah.
And they weren't replaced with equal talent, to be honest. I hate to say it.
No. And I think they've done some good in that, like Kenzie Page and Camille and some of the women's roster, they are Max. Just really incredible stuff. I really enjoyed Camille, her run, and I thought Kenzie Page was a really good person to dethrone her after a 800 some odd day run. But again, it just shows how I think it's changed, because now you have Roman Reigns. Let's take a Roman Reigns, right? He's the champ for 1,400 days or whatever it is, and he's defended the title since WrestleMania twice.
Right. Look, here's the thing about the NWA. You can't fool the people, like Burton Cummings was saying. You can't fool them.
Yeah.
Here's why. When they run a pay-per-view in front of 5,000 people instead of 250, let's talk.
Yeah.
Until that happens, I don't know what to think of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a shame. To me, it's if they weren't using the NWA letters, I might feel different about it. But
exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to lambaste anybody, but I'm greatly disappointed.
Yeah.
And it's not the Tyrus thing. It's not the Tyrus thing. It's more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate to say this. I really hate to say it, but it's almost like, hey, you want to wrestle tonight? It reminds me of the old AWA in the waning days. You never know who's going to be on the TV show from week to week. Neither did they.
Yeah.
or the IWCCW feud between Honky Tonk Man and
Rick Rude.
That never happened, but they promoted it for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right, or maybe longer.
Yeah, I mean
that promo with Bill Apter, I think, aired for a year and a half.
I think that and the old Vic Steamboat match with Tony Atlas.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's true.
Just that, and they'd have maybe a a segment with Curly Moe or something like that.
Curly Moe
shook
my hand once and almost broke my hand.
Yeah.
He was one of those big guys who wanted to show he was strong. And
Yes.
and I went, oh, thanks a lot. It was like a cartoon, the hands swelling up, going back and forth. It was, thanks a lot, buddy.
On the opposite side of that, I met the great Khali, and he had the softest hands I've ever felt in my entire
usually
life.
A big, strong guy doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They don't need to do it.
Yeah, Curly Mo might have needed it.
I mean, I shook Hulk Hogan's hand. It was a normal handshake. It felt normal. It's what are you going to do?
It's funny too, tying a couple of things together. We talk about the IWCCW show before we were talking about Bryan Adams. So, when he got the push as Kona Crush with the neon colors and that cool theme song, and they're going to bring him in as a face. And you remember a guy used to wrestle a lot of the shows in New York, the Metal Maniac?
I know him. Yes, we've been conversing on Facebook.
So we're at a show at Holy Child Church in Staten Island. The Metal Maniac, I forget who he's wrestling, Jimmy Snooker or somebody. All the fans, these drunk fans behind us are going, Crush! They thought he was Crush.
I think he was about a head too short to be Crush.
Yeah, but it was
not that he was short. I'm not saying he was short. Just Crush was huge.
Crush was huge.
Like I said, he was in my small pickup truck, and he could barely fit in there. Yeah. I felt sorry for him. But you know how it is at the end of these indie shows? You're going to take him there. You're going to take him to the airport. You're going to take him to the bar. You're going to take him somewhere else.
Yeah,
take him to the hotel. And they would always ask Bob, could you take him over and then meet us there? Yeah, all right, fine.
Yeah.
I remember driving a few wrestlers around just through osmosis.
Yeah.
I didn't ask to do it, and I, honest to God, didn't want to do it. But, hey, I was heading in the same place, so I said, fine,
Yeah.
No, I'm a weird case. It's like there were other wrestling writers who were dying to hang with the wrestlers at the bar and this and that. I did it at times, but it wasn't my goal.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, maybe I hope I didn't come off as being standoffish or something like that, but I was more interested in the promotions as opposed to the wrestlers, if that makes any sense.
No, I get that. I think the
big picture. Yeah.
The big picture kind of thing. But again, I think that brings me back to Portland. I think you have people who keep this territory alive. And I think you see that with a lot. I think that was even the reason why Wrestler Weekly was built. It was keeping those memories alive, that Scotty had of the Mid-Atlantic and, growing up, it meaning so much to him. And I look back, and that's where my love of all this stuff comes from. Those times where I was a kid and trading tapes and reading magazines and, just learning and seeing and, I was just watching, like I said, and I think that's why I've gotten into this watching of Portland. It's like, it almost takes you back to like, man, I wish I could have experienced this as it happened, And that's why I do this in a spoiler-free kind of way, because it's like, I know some stuff, but it's like, I really try to like keep it. It was another guy too, and we could probably piece this in too somewhere, is Chris Colt spent quite a bit of time in Portland, lower on the card, but he's a guy who has gotten popular in the last few years because of Jim Cornette had reviewed some tape of him, and he was very good. He was very talented. Couldn't work unless he was high.
He had a very strange and flamboyant look and visage, so to speak. I don't think he was a gimmick for 2 seconds. That was him
at all. It was him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, he looked like a wigged out hippie, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And he just, because there's so little information out there about him, you know what I mean? I think it's really taken off, but he was very good. Again, one of the guys that we're friendly with, Kirby Strom, who's like a real big Portland wrestling historian. And I use the term historian purposely because he really is. He owns now a lot of Chris Colt's used ring gear that he got during a estate sale. And it's incredible to see what he has, but just really incredible, and it's cool to be able to celebrate guys like that, you know what I mean, who might not have been remembered any other way. And now through digital media, people are seeing them more and more, and we're talking about them more and more. It's just really, really cool to me.
But the wrestling people I knew who were around in the era, I guess early 70s through about, I don't know when Chris stopped working, but they said he was pegged to be a major star.
Yeah.
And just one thing would happen or something else would happen. And he never broke through wide.
Yeah.
But they said he definitely had the talent.
Oh, yeah.
Athletically.
Yeah.
He would do stuff in the ring. He was fearless in the ring. I mean, almost like death-defying in the ring he was.
Yeah.
And I think, so it's fascinating. Now that you bring him up, I want to know more about him. And that would be either a great movie or a tremendous book.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were a lot of things in play. I think obviously, there was a lot of wrestlers using drugs at that point, obviously. But I think now, with, the LGBTQ community being what it is now, I think it would be a lot easier for him to be a star now than it might have been back then. I think it would be smaller guys too, are widely more accepted now. He wasn't a super tall guy.
He was not a big guy, huge guy.
But I think too, ultimately, if he could have put it together and, but I just think, like I said, it was a different world back then, but I'm glad to see, like I said, you see somebody's talent like that being recognized at any point, and it's a shame he's not here to see it, but,
Listen, somebody will post a picture of him on Facebook and the responses are almost unanimously, what could have been?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or what should have been?
Yeah.
He was a major talent.
He worked in Detroit too with the Sheik, when
yes, he did. Yeah,
teamed up with Lanny Poffo. There was tag champs with Lanny Poffo.
Was he part of the Hell's Angels?
He was one of the Hell's Angels. Yeah,
yeah. With
I forget Dupree, Ryan Dupree, I think.
Right.
And
they were controversial.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
69, 70 when he was working for the Sheik, they were pretty considered stretching the boundary a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to come off like real Hell's Angels, I think.
Yeah.
And they looked it too.
They did. Yeah. And, but it's really cool, like I said, to be able to celebrate these things. And that's why I love what you do, Bob, because it really does just bring you back to all those good things, and even with the modern wrestling, like we talked about the NWA, I want all those folks to succeed. I want them to be, something good and, something that, they get a lot of joy in because, maybe the styles have changed, but, I respect the athleticism that these folks have and, the different things that they can do. And, it doesn't always have to change to my liking. I can always just flip on a recording and, see what was and be happy there and still wish those folks well, even if it's not 100% for me.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what I wouldn't have given to be in Portland.
Oh,
anywhere in that small arena.
Yeah.
Watching Rip Oliver and Moose Morawski and Buddy Rose and Stan Stasiak and
Lonnie Mayne.
Moondog Mayne. Yeah. Just think of it. Just think of it.
Incredible.
And I watched that show and it gives me the vibe of the Armory I used to go to when I was a kid, and to see wrestling, a small, dingy place.
Yeah.
But once those lights came up, it was magic.
It was, yeah.
Right? There's something about it. Most wrestling arenas were not fancy places when I was a kid.
No.
But once the stars hit the ring, you got lost in it, totally suspended in it. And when the ring bell rang, you were just wide-eyed and hands on your legs, just watching the action and thinking how bigger than life it was,
Yeah.
It's a flavor that's probably still there with today's young people.
Yeah.
Because, they see them on TV and now the packaging is so fancy now with the fireworks and the music and the lights and the long entranceways and, what have you. But you know what? Again, I'm coming to grips with the fact that I can't criticize younger wrestling fans for liking the newer wrestling that I don't cotton to because they don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, no, and this is, like you said, for those folks, it's like we were, it's larger than life, you take a look, and I've said this, and I give AEW credit for doing a great job with, booking that Wembley Stadium show, and it had a incredible look to it and feel. But even, nobody does spectacle like the WWE does. Nobody.
No, nobody. You know what? Nobody in entertainment does it like they do.
No, it's truly larger than life. I mean, you take a look at The Rock showing up on SmackDown, 100 million views, on social media, it's incredible. Dwayne Johnson comes out of that tunnel and he is larger than life, it's incredidible.
Yeah. Well, you know what? These are healthy days for us nostalgic types. Yeah. Like in the lead into this show, I talked about the revival of the WFIA.
Yeah.
The Wrestling Fans International Association. Yeah. And I see the logo, and they're using the same old logo from the 70s.
Yeah.
I went, wow. So I'm going to join. Awesome. It's like, what do you got to lose? I mean, and there's some good people that are on the board that, like Dave Dynasty and Rick Del Santo and I think it's Mr. Drake that's, let me just double check my notes here. Yeah, Brad Drake is running it.
Yeah.
And it's like, these guys know their stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the end goal is here, but it looks like fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. I didn't know that was back, but yeah, for sure. And I think too, and this is what I like, and this is what I tell people, because I really don't want to begrudge any wrestling that anybody likes. I think for me, there's enough room for everybody on this train to like what you like and enjoy what you do. And just enjoy it in good health and make good memories. I think that's the most important thing,
We are of a like mind, but I will say that I keep seeing hardcore clips and I'm like sick to my stomach.
Yeah, no, that stuff I'm not a fan of. But
or death matches, I should say, not hardcore. Hardcore has been superseded by death match. The death match mentality. Again, do whatever you want out there, but you know what? We're just waiting. You can hear the clock ticking. And something really friggin' bad is going to happen. You can smell it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I respect professional wrestlers so much.
Yeah.
You have to give up your whole life and it messes with your brain. And, it's like you have to leave your family and go on the road if you're even a little bit successful.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
And
it's a hard life.
I discovered after I left PWI that my yearly salary was way over what a lot of wrestlers made.
Man.
Can you imagine? I was sitting in my duff in a chair.
Yeah.
So I give professional wrestlers all the credit in the world for being great athletes and sticking their necks on the line, literally, to entertain us in this most unique way.
Yeah, agreed.
And I just don't want to see them get hurt. Maybe I'm too much for pacifist at my old age. I don't know.
Yeah.
But people are going into rings and legitimately hurting each other.
Yeah.
I'll never cotton to that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling's a skill. You're supposed to make it look like you're killing each other, but you can still go home at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then have to hit the hospital on the way home.
Yeah.
To get like staples and stitches. Who needs that? I mean, it's not entertaining to me. I can't help it.
No,
but again, that's my can of worms. What can I say? Well, Mike, I love having you on the show. I just really enjoy having you on the show. We are of such a similar mindset when it comes to looking back at our favorite memories and now discovering new things that are old.
Yeah, I love it.
Again, I want to give a shout out to Dave Dynasty for his video collection. To Chris P. Lettuce, also known as Armstrong Alley, for his video collection on YouTube.
Incredible.
YouTube is wonderful. The new Mario Savoldi video library is a gas.
Incredible.
There's other Roku stations. You just mentioned, what was it? Testosterone Overload it's called?
Testosterone Overload. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. On YouTube. Okay.
91. Excuse me.
So we have a cross between a cross between YouTube stations.
Yeah.
And streaming services.
Yeah.
And
incredible.
Here's to the WWF on Peacock.
Yeah.
We can still see Joe McHugh and Gary Michael Capetta and Buddy Rose with his valets, one of which was Sherry Martel first.
Yes.
I think they were managed by the Grand Wizard, if memory serves.
Yeah.
What's going on with Wrestler Weekly? I talked to Scotty a few weeks ago, as you know, and I know he's working feverishly on his new book.
Yeah.
About that amazing card
Yes, the Super
But what's
Bowl
going
with
on
Mark
overall with you and everything that's going on with WW?
So Wrestler Weekly, we are, just keeping that spirit alive of old school wrestling, doing posts daily. We have our daily themes, plus different history posts that I do. And me and Scotty really tag team that together and really enjoy doing that. And I think the other thing too is, we're getting ready for our yearly powwow together where we kind of, take a deep dive into some wrestling memorabilia for the weekend. We do that in Raleigh every year. So that's coming up. We're really looking forward to that. So we have the book coming out and we are working on new content all the time. We have ideas for shows and different things. And so it's just about executing them at the right time. And getting them out there. But we have some things in the works, some new show ideas and some new things that we want to do. But yeah, keep an eye out for the books because they're coming. The Belt versus Belt book. And again, too, grab Family Bacon Wrestling if you haven't. It's a great book. It is a great book about being a wrestling fan. And for you old school fans, I think you'll really get a kick out of taking it back and dialing it back to that time where we didn't have the instant news of the internet and knowing who won matches. And, when the television went off and, Flair and Steamboat were still battling it out and they said, oh, we got to go, you waited until that next week to see what happened. And so I think it's a good look at that. But I think folks will like the new book. And I think folks will enjoy the content and come talk to us. We love talking wrestling with you. Share with us what your favorites are, what is in your collection. For us, it's not about our stuff is better and who has the most toys or, whatever the case may be. We want to share in this with everybody who wants to come and share about the wrestling that they love. So that's what we're up to.
Now be specific and tell the people where to find you.
So you can find us on X or Twitter as, you might have known it, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We're on Threads, and you can find us on TikTok now, which is really cool. So those are the places that you can find us on social media, and you can also find us on YouTube at Wrestler Weekly as well. See some of our shows, different interviews that we've done over time. So those are the avenues where you can find us.
And folks, the price is right.
It's free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free, and it will always be free.
You all got no excuse for not checking out one of the coolest segments of online wrestling nostalgia. Because I don't know how else to put it. You're doing the same thing I am, but you're doing it in an audio video component that I don't choose to do because, God, look at this face. It's like, who wants to? I'm not, a lot of the podcasters do video versions. I'm not doing that. Somebody brought it up. Oh, I can do it for you for blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nobody wants to look at this. They didn't put me on TV for long. Todd figured it out. Get off of there. It's the way it is. I can't help it. But no, it's like I will say that this year, 2013, Scotty's working on a book that I'm eagerly awaiting. This has been the year of the book.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm really enjoying all these new books is because, like Joyce Paustian, if you haven't read that, you got to see that book.
Yeah, that is the next one I'm looking at.
I'm telling you. And the reason I'm so excited about all these books, from the Chic book with Brian R. Solomon to that,
which is
to
phenomenal.
Tim Hornbaker's new book on Ric Flair.
Yep.
It's like buying the old wrestling magazines again. It feels like that. You're seeing photos you didn't see before. You're finding out things you didn't know happen.
Yeah.
It is a golden age for wrestling nostalgia right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. I can't thank you enough for when you come on. It's such a blast. You have an open invite, as you know, and I'm happy you showed up tonight. Folks, we were almost not going to be able to make this recording. Mike came through in a pinch at the end, and I don't want to hold him because I know he's super busy just like I am. And give my regards to Scotty again. You guys are the best.
Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Remember, gang, check out Wrestle Weekly wherever you get your anything. Because they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Mike Leotis, everybody. Always a blast talking to my friend Mike Leotis. Do check out Wrestler Weekly when you get an opportunity. It's a heck of a lot of fun in all of its permutations. Should I use words like that? These $100 words? I don't know. I got a vocabulary. That's why I was a writer. You know what I'm saying? Well, anyway, next week brings our first meet and greet, whatever you want to call it, online chat for the members of the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club. If you want to be a part of the fan club, read about it on our website, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. That's outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. And you'll learn about, you can win some prizes, you can take part in these chats, and generally help perpetuate the show as we move forward into our second year in January. I can't believe we're that close to it already. It's really cool. We have a lot of upcoming fun stuff coming your way. We hope you stick with us. I have to do my housekeeping now. Again, to contact us, it's outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Write to us, please. Our website, which has every one of our programs on it, it's outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. Buzzsprout is the company I'm working with. Again, it's outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. Every one of our episodes is there. If you are app-phobic, bang, you can listen right then and there. Facebook, I'm Bob Smith. I'm singing with BB King on the lead page of my Facebook page. Also have still at Twitter at Bob Smith NYC. I am rarely there. So I'd rather just stick with the email and the Facebook. It seems to be doing the job so far. Even in terms of promoting the show, we use it as a main conduit to get the word out amongst my friends and fans and whatever, and all my wrestling people that I've gotten to know over the years. It works pretty well. Also, here's a tip for you. If anyone ever gives you a phone call and says they have an opportunity for you, hang up. That's multi-level marketing talk. Either offer you a job or go away. Got it? Well, anyway, that's enough of my yakking for today. I'm hoping you're enjoying the show. Great memories of Portland, and one of those great territories we're all going to miss. But I don't want you to miss another episode of the Outdated Wrestling Hour if you can avoid it. We're here every Friday. Remember that. Friday is our release date. Things have been going swimmingly, and it's all thanks to you guys out there. And you men and women who listen to the show religiously every week, thank you so much. We got a lot of fun coming your way. I'm noticing some duplication in guests in the wrestling podcast world again. That's something I'm trying to avoid. And there's a few people that's been on my show that I see are going on other shows. And I see people that I wanted to book that are going on other shows. So I want to keep this as fresh as I can and offer you an alternative to what everybody else is doing, if that makes any sense. So if you see a wrestler or a personality on Joe Bleen's Wrestling Hour or whatever, he's not going to be on my show for a while because there's got to be some space there. You know, it's just, my feeling is if you heard him on another show, you're not going to listen to mine. And you know what, that does tend to work out that way. You know, commerce, you know, I want ears. We want ears for attention. And I would like you, if you enjoy the show, to go to your friends and go, hey, you really ought to listen to this because it's fun. Word of mouth, I'm convinced it's still the best way to get the word out about anything. So if you have friends who like wrestling, see if they'll give us a listen. It's free. Until next time, my name is Bob Smith. I'm the host of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Coming up on a very important birthday in October. I'll put it this way. I hope I make it. So in any event, take care of yourselves because I sure as heck got to take care of myself.